Jedan od najpoznatijih košarkaških novinara na svetu, čovek koji je bio u Beogradu, koji priča o Beogradu i ta priča se tiče i budućnosti Beograda je Brian Windhorst. On se javlja iz Njujorka. Sa njim o NBA Evropi, o Euroligi, o Nikoli Jokiću, o ostalim srpskim košarkašima u NBA-u, o budućnosti košarke uopšte i o budućnosti sporta u narednih 20-30 minuta. Koji je bolji sport kojem je bitan dodir? Možda upravo neka to bude na neki način kontakt sa sponzorom, dodir ljubavi. To je nova kampanja Plazme, zahvalnost što su tu i zahvalnost naravno Generaliju koji podržava ovaj podcast. Razgovor sa Brianom Windhorstom. Brian, first of all, thank you very much for your time. You've been in Belgrade and you said about Partizan Red Star game that it was one of the most intense game you ever witnessed. Is that true?
Yes, without question. Especially for a game that, is regular season, and not any playoffs. I had very high hopes, and I've been told that even by the standard of Partizan Red Star, that was a game that was higher energy because of all the things that were surrounding it and whatnot. And obviously, over the years, they've played for various titles, when they've actually faced each other, and I'm sure it's more intense. But I came at such a wonderful time. It was the Christmas season. The city was beautiful. I was only able to come to town for about a day or so, but I had a great opportunity to see the cathedral, and the city was just, it was a Friday night. The city was glowing. The atmosphere at the game was just I could ever have dreamed. I was just smiling. I didn't have as we say, I didn't have a dog in the fight, so I could just enjoy the back and forth. And afterwards, I went to an amazing dinner with some Serbian. There was just a lot of meat and cheese. Every time, I don't even know what it's all called. It's just I still have the best meals I've had in the last 6 months. I would love to. I want to go back. I love the food so much after the game, and I just had a tremendous. I was only able to be there for 24 hours, but I couldn't imagine having it gone better. The game itself was, very high level game, very high intensity. The players were totally committed to the game. The fans obviously were totally committed to the game. I even thought the officiating was excellent. I was so impressed with the officials to handle that environment, and a very, very close game with tight calls like at the end. And the officials did not get intimidated. In all honesty, one of the most impressive things to me was how the officials handled themselves. I don't know any. I don't know any of the referees in the Euroleague, but I have to imagine that these are three of the best referees in the Euroleague. And I was saying to myself, I would love to have those three referees do the gold medal final. In LA in 2028 because of how well they handled the game. So I had such a great experience that I'm almost afraid that it could never be topped. That's how great experience that was for the 24 hours.
I hope you will come back and you will witness similar things again.
Definitely coming back. There is no doubt that I'm going to come back.
Do you think that NBA teams will and would adjust to such atmosphere?
It would be very hard. It would be very hard. In all honesty, I don't even think it's possible. There's just no way that the structure of the league would allows it to be possible because, first off, in NBA, I mean, just be honest, in NBA arenas, fans who it's so very expensive to attend an NBA game. And the higher level the NBA game, the more expensive it is. And so rabid fans are not really in the stands for an NBA game. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't great atmospheres for NBA games where you would, really have great energy in the arena, but there's no way possible that you can create that sort of communal atmosphere in an NBA game just because of the fans come in the game. It's much more, you could see something like that in a college environment. But here's the problem: is that at the college games, the highest level college games are played in giant NBA style arenas anyway. Like, there is the only thing close to that would be like two rivals playing a regular season game where they didn't have a specialty arena, because the biggest college games in the US are played in neutral site arenas. So I don't think it's possible. And in all honesty, I don't think NBA players would react that well to that environment. And like, by the way, when American players come back from playing, in Greece, in Serbia, this is what they talk about. They laugh when they say that there's tough environments in the NBA. They go, "Oh man, it's hard to go play in such and such." And players who have played, in the Belgrade Derby, they're like, "Yeah, right." You're it's kind of like, I remember talking to an NBA player once about a mall, and I was like, "Boy, this is a really nice big mall." And he's like, "Go to a mall in Beijing." You know what I mean? He's like, when you've seen a Chinese mall, American mall doesn't look this. When you've seen, a Partizan Red Star game, intense atmosphere takes on a different meaning.
Do you think that this is one of the obstacles for the, how should I say, future DNA if NBA Europe enters the continent? We will never witness those kind of games again, according to your feelings.
Well, you'll certainly will have them in Belgrade, but here's the thing: people in Europe need to understand about the NBA, and this will be NBA Europe too, is my guess. I don't know, of course, because it hasn't happened yet, but the number one priority for basketball in America is money. And it doesn't mean that the basketball isn't important. The basketball is important, and they do care about it. But the number one priority is money. This is one of the things that I see spending time in Europe that is so different from America, is that so often when I see basketball in Europe, I see all these places where American basketball would be pulling money. Let me give you an example. When I came over to France to first meet Victor Wembanyama, his team that he was on in Paris played an exhibition game, a practice game, a friendly, and they had it closed to fans. It wasn't on TV. It wasn't on fan. This is a preposterous idea to an American. Victor Wembanyama, there's only so many games he's ever going to play in Paris. Why would you allow a game to go by that you didn't monetize? When I went to the Olympics in Paris in 2024, they didn't sell alcohol at the games. The idea of not selling alcohol at a sporting event is completely foreign in America. The profit on alcohol is enormous. They didn't have like really high-end food at the games. You couldn't buy merchandise. You couldn't buy hats, shirts, gear. They couldn't buy that at the games. And where you could buy it was not very good. And, the American mind doesn't work that way. The American mind is, how can we squeeze $1 out of every single corner? And that's why the NBA is like it is. I mean, the NBA is revenue first, and then focus on basketball. And they put a lot of money into the basketball. The players are well taken care of. The facilities are great and everything like that. It's not unfair, but it's money first. That's not how they play basketball in Europe. Obviously, everyone has bills to pay. The players make decisions based on money. Everything is, money comes into it, but it's not money first. And NBA is money first, and I will believe that NBA Europe will be money first. And, for example, when I walked into the arena in Belgrade, it's a glorious arena. It is one of the I've been to many arenas in Europe. There's no arenas in Europe like that. I mean, maybe the O2 Arena in London. I haven't been to the arena in Berlin. I know that that's a good arena. That may be similar. That is an absolute first class arena. And like, that's the type of arena that an NBA team would have in terms of size and everything like that. But an NBA arena would have totally be set up differently to pull out money out of the seats. And so, like, Belgrade has everything that you would ever want in basketball, but it's not revenue first. And so, and that's just how the NBA thinks. The NBA is more, interested in like monetizing a place like Manchester, UK, than Belgrade. Not because of the basketball, not because of the fans. It's not a commentary on the love of the Serbians have for the game and the players they produce. It is a straight money decision. And the expansion to NBA Europe is not about doing yes, I guess they could look you in the eye and say it's growing the game, and we want to bring the game to more people in Europe and capture more fans in Europe. Like, that's true, but it's just not the first priority. The first priority is money. And so that's the way the NBA operates. That's the way the American mind operates, for better or for worse. And my guess is when you see NBA Europe come to fruition, the decisions that are going to get made will be money first decisions, because that's how the NBA operates.
Do you think that NBA Europe is possible? And according to your information, are we closer to NBA Europe than we were, let's say, two months ago?
Yeah, it's going to happen. The NBA and the owners in the NBA have decided that they want it to happen. And so it is going to happen. Do I think it's going to be successful? I am very highly skeptical that will be successful, because I have spent, much of my career traveling around the world, seeing, spending time in China, spending time in the Philippines, spending time in the Middle East, spending time in South America, spending a lot of time in Europe, seeing basketball in places in Europe. I haven't been to Greece yet. That's my next place I want to go. And they don't do NBA style. They play, the decisions are not made. The decisions are made for the game, for the fans, for the communities. Those come first before, the money is not prioritized the way the NBA is going to prioritize it. And so I also know this: you cannot create tradition. You cannot just say, today, here is a team here. It doesn't work in the United States. It's certainly not going to work in Europe. And so I am highly skeptical that it can work. That, the reasons that they're getting into some of these businesses, I don't think are for necessarily the reasons that you would start a basketball team somewhere. But when I've talked to NBA owners, when I talk to billionaires, about this, they say, give us 10 years. You may be right that in year 1 or year 2, that it may be rough, that we may not have fan support, that, the level of play may not be what we want. Give us 10 years. And they say in 10 years, you're going to see what happens once we have the time to build it all out and do it, the way we know how to do it and stuff. And that may be true. And that's why those people are billionaires and I am not. I would look at something and say, I don't think that's going to work. I'm not going to do it. A billionaire would say, I'm going to invest in something and I'm going to throw a bunch of money at it. And then in 10 years, it's going to be worth this much. And those guys could be right. And I've had this discussion. I've just said, the way I see the world, the growth of basketball is challenged because there are fans who want more basketball. Those fans are primarily in Asia, in China, in the Philippines, in India. Those fans want more basketball, but they don't have talent on the world stage. You don't. Chinese players, Japanese players, Filipinos, Indians, they're not producing players that can play at the highest level. So you have a hard time connecting those fans with their players because they have the fans, but they don't have the talent. In the Middle East, where they have a lot of money and they want to invest in sport to bring the world to them, they don't have a lot of fans. There's not a lot of people there, and clearly no players. So they have the capital, but they don't, and they want to bring it here, but they have to bring it all in. They have to import it, just like they have to import everything. And so it's not a good fit, So the people are in Asia. The money is in the Middle East. The players are in Europe. Europe has the talent, but it doesn't have the investment. If you look at the way the football clubs in Europe are funded and the way they are supported, and you look at the way the basketball teams are, there's a huge difference. You would never say that Real Madrid or Barcelona or Arsenal lacked for investment. But you would look at basketball teams in Spain and obviously in England and in France, and you would say, boy, they lack for investment. It's not that the money isn't there. The money just isn't in basketball. And so this is the challenge. You have underserved talent in Europe, underserved money in Middle East, underserved fans in Asia. And the NBA is trying to figure out how to thread that together and bring it into their world, but it's still a problem. And so they look at the Euroleague and they say we can do better. And I agree, the Euroleague could do better, but it changes the way the European mind wants to work. So I believe in basketball. I've devoted my life to it. I want European basketball to be great, but what I want is what we have in Belgrade, and I would love to have that everywhere. But that's not real life, and I don't think that's where we're headed.
About real life, have you ever imagined that in real life some kid from Serbia would dominate the NBA? Please, maybe I'm biased, but this guy is magnificent, I know that I'm speaking about Nikola Jokić. This is crazy stuff. I know, I've seen your reports, I've seen what you said, I've seen what other commentators said. First, at the beginning, they were skeptical. Some, my opinion, say big regards to Mr. Kendrick Perkins. Sometimes he tried to undermine what he is doing, and some other people and commentators. But have you ever, I know that you did, but I want you to say it. I know that you appreciated Europe talent 10, 15 years ago. So please tell me from your side, in your perspective, how it looked like.
Yeah, listen, in 2006, I was in Tokyo and I watched the Greeks completely undermanned against the Americans. I mean, you have to understand, this is LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Carmelo Anthony, Chris Bosh, and the Greeks just beat them because they knew how to play basketball together better. And, going through that experience, it just changed the way I looked at it. And I have so much respect for the Serbians. The 2023 World Cup in Manila, the run that Serbia went on there to reach the final. As an American, I was extraordinarily worried about Serbia winning, the 2024 Olympics. And, when Jokić, he had the really long run to winning the NBA title, and then he didn't play for the team, which I know was controversial, but he was exhausted. I understand. And I thought, I don't think the Serbians, I don't think they'll qualify. And, I was thinking, Jokić could go back to the finals in 2024, and how are the Serbians going to qualify then they'd have to qualify out of the qualifying tournaments. I don't know if Serbia's going to make the Olympics in Paris. And that team was having so many problems. And I have a great affinity for Bogdan Bogdanović. He is such a wonderful person. And if you know Bogdan, he works so hard at his game. And I don't understand everything about Serbia. I still am very much learning about it, but I've been told, and Bogdan has told me that there's a viewpoint of the players who are from Belgrade, and then there's a viewpoint of the players who are from the north, and there's sort of a thing as a north-south thing. But he even explained to me that for this kid to come from the north, this fat kid from the north, who even within Serbia is regarded differently, even amongst Serbians, it's so ridiculous. And so, but I have so much respect for Serbia. And then, they get through. Bogdan has amazing games. He's at odds with Pesic, and Bogdan, delivers, and Nikola Jokić delivers, has all these 3-pointers in the semifinal. And I'm telling you, I'm sitting there in Manila and I watch the Serbians win the semifinals, and I go, the Americans are in trouble because Jokic is in the Olympics. This is what I'm saying to myself in Manila the night that they won the semifinal to reach the final. I was like, the Serbians are in the Olympics. This is not good. And then when the Serbians got drawn into the Americans' pool, I was like, this is not good. You do not give the Serbians 2 chances to look at the Americans. And then they decide to play them in a friendly game in Abu Dhabi. And I said, no, do not let the Serbians have 3 looks. Do not let it. And that comes out of my immense respect for Jokic. I watched him with the Serbian team beat the Americans in China in 2019, where I thought they might win that World Cup. And that's another story for another day. They were the best looking team, but, Nikola is my favorite player to watch. I do everything I can to watch him. I love watching him play, the way he thinks the game. My son is 8 years old, and, in the games where he plays, they have a running clock. The clock just runs. And the one thing that Nikola is so smart that he has this technique where he figures out how to steal time. If you make a basket, the shot clock doesn't start, and so Nikola will fumble the ball, he'll tie his shoe, and next thing you know, a 24-second possession has taken 35 seconds, and he does it 3 or 4 times, and he shortens the game by a minute when they're ahead. And I tell my son, when you're ahead, you need to Jokić it. Take extra time on free throws. Take extra time for substitutions. Because he's so smart. And this is a thing about basketball. Yes, it helps in basketball to be very tall. Yes, it helps in basketball to be very strong. It helps in basketball to jump high, to be fast. The best players in the world are ones that have size and speed. But see, here's the thing. To really be great in basketball, you have to have 3 things. You have to have size, you have to have skill, and you have to have sophistication. I don't know if that word translates, but you have to be. And it's not just intelligence. You have to understand the nuance of the game. Many great players have 2 of those, where they have great size and they have great skill, but they're not sophisticated. Some players are very sophisticated, but don't have great size. We have many, like Chris Paul has never won a championship. He's one of the most sophisticated players ever. He has incredible skill. He doesn't have the size. So when you look at a player like LeBron James, size, skill, sophistication. You look at a player like Victor Wembanyama, my God, size, skill, sophistication to the max. Jokic breaks the sophistication scale. He breaks the skill scale. His skills are incredible. His sophistication is incredible. It is off the charts. Like you've never seen anything. And then of course he's also 6'11", 7 foot, whatever, so that he's able to add all that. But even if he was 6'5", he would be an incredibly dominant player. The fact that he is also all three of those, and it's the sophistication part's the hard one to find. You can find size. You can find skill, sophistication. He is one of the most sophisticated players in the history of the sport. And to watch him, of course, he dominates games with his size. He's taller than a lot of people, of course. I'm sure when he was 10, he was dominating people with his size. He dominates the game with his skill, obviously. His ability, the thing that drives me, when the ball lands on I've described this before. And of course, the Serbians know all this. I'm not saying anything they don't know. They're like, yes, we knew this 10 years ago. Don't talk about this now, you fool. We knew this. But when the way he shoots the ball, he is so skilled that he has ability to have the ball come at such an angle that when it lands on the rim, it lands like if I only showed you a camera angle of the rim and I had 20 players shoot, you would be able to tell which ball came from Jokic, because he has the ability to manipulate the way the ball lands on the rim so that the ball can bounce on the rim. And it's actually, he's been bothered by a wrist injury in this last few weeks. And you can tell he's not right because the ball doesn't land on the rim like that as much. It still does, but you can tell his feel is just a little bit off. But I believe, maybe I'm wrong, I believe I could just watch the rim and not watch who's shooting it. And after a few minutes say, that's Jokic's shot. And of course, he manipulates the pass and he manipulates angles. When he was in about his third or fourth year, he was already very good. We already knew how good he was. I went to a game in Oklahoma City, and in Oklahoma City, the media is able to sit in about the third or fourth row. And so the reason that was obviously everybody says we want to sit in the first row, of course. But when you're in the third or fourth row, your eye level is at the same as the eye level of the players on the court. This, to me, is the best place to be. And my eye level was on the same eye level as Nikola's. And of course, I appreciated the way he would find angles. But this was a preseason game. It was a meaningless game in October, okay? He only played, 15, 18 minutes in the game. But when I saw the game at his same eye level, and I could see the actual reads he was making and the angles he was creating, my level of appreciation went up even more in a preseason game. Okay. And so, I'm so disappointed that he hurt his knee this year, because he was on path to having, I believed he was going to win the MVP. I still think the Nuggets can win the championship. They're behind now. They're going to have to pull some magic. But his level of size, skill, sophistication, it's top 3-5 all time. The joy that I get by watching him play is every possession. The thing I say about LeBron, it's a little bit to this day, but when LeBron was at his absolute height, I could say about LeBron, if you go watch him play, I promise you, he will do something that you will always remember. It may be in the pregame warm-up. It may be a pass. It may be just where he ran from one side to the other. He will do something that you will walk away and say, I always remember that. I believe that Victor is that type of player. I believe that you can go see Victor and you can say, if I went to watch him play in a game, he will do something I always will remember. Jokic is in that category to me, that he will do it. He will do something in a game that you'll be like, my God, I cannot believe that pass. I cannot believe, that he hit that shot. I cannot believe he did this. And so, and he does it in such a Serbian way where he does it without attracting attention to himself. He does it with toughness. He does it with intelligence. He doesn't care what anybody thinks about him. He doesn't care what the score is. And so, he's the quintessential, he is such an icon. And so my respect level for him is, I could go on and on. I've already talked too long, but I could go on and on about just how impressive he is to me.
Okay, tough question. Where you rate him in the history of the game?
Yeah. Way up there. So the difficulty is when you talk about this with Americans, they want to count rings. Mm-hmm. And that's you're not going to be able to enter somebody with one championship into the conversation. But I'm just saying to you, obviously Michael Jordan had size, 6'6", skill, sophistication, Michael Jordan's sophistication. But in terms of those things, which I think are the most important things in basketball, size, skill, sophistication, we're talking in the handful of players all time. We could sit here for an hour and debate where, no, he's seventh, no, he's fifth, no, he's ninth, and, you could score your points, I could score my points. Mm-hmm. He has 3 MVPs, okay? If he's able to win another championship, and I hope he does, when you start talking about somebody with 3 MVPs and 2 championships, we're down to one hand. We're down to one hand. So I really don't want to be the person to count the rings. I don't like that. I don't like doing that. But there is something to be said for being able to scale the championship mountain more than once, because it is a mountain. It's supposed to be hard. You're supposed to have injuries. You're supposed to have things not go your way. You're supposed to have to overcome things. Winning it is an incredible accomplishment. I am one of these people that say that LeBron James getting to the finals 8 years in a row is one of the great accomplishments in NBA history. And people will say, well, he lost 5 of them, so he must not be as great as others. And I say, okay, well, you go win 3 playoff series 8 years in a row, and you tell me how that, the ability to climb that mountain over and over. So to truly get in that, what we're looking for is the one hand club. I think Nikola can get there, but I do think it will take another champion. I'm sorry to say that. I hate even hearing the words come out of my mouth, but I think he needs to be able to, and he can, of course, no doubt. I would also love to see him play for the gold medal in LA. I cannot express to the Americans enough how narrowly the United States has won the last 2 gold medals. Yeah. I mean, so close. And to the American, they're like, they're fine. Yeah, we win it every 4 years. We'll check you in 4 years. It's so close. They barely won in Tokyo and they barely won in Paris. And a shot or 2 goes the other way. I've gone back and watched, the fourth quarter of the game against Serbia. I still don't 100% know how it went that way. I would love to see Nikola play. I'm in Los Angeles right now. I would love to see him play in the gold medal game against anybody. I don't care if it's against Wembanyama in France. I mean, that would be, but I would love to see him play for the gold medal too, because I know how, I just know what it means. It was so much fun to watch the Serbians celebrate the bronze medal. They were having the most fun out of anybody. The Americans were just relieved. The French were devastated. The Serbians were drunk and happy. They had to wait for the whole ceremony was waiting. The game did till like 9:00 in Paris. It was almost midnight. Like, where are the Serbians? Where are the Serbians? But I would love to see that. But I do think to get to that conversation, he needs to climb that mountain one more time.
Can you tell me LeBron or Jordan? But I know that you are really close to LeBron. But here, in this part of the world, we usually think Jordan. But what's your opinion? Just briefly, if it's possible.
I would just say that most people, when they get asked the question, don't want to have a conversation about it. They've already decided. Uh-huh. There's nothing that you can say. It's not a discussion. One person states their opinion and then just waits. Mm-hmm. The other person, and then they give their opinion. So here's the way I answer it. I think about it when I think about a mountain. I talk about mountains a lot. The highest peak. What is more impressive to you? The highest peak. Jordan had the highest peak. 6-0 in 8 years, untouchable. The highest peak. No one has ever achieved that high of a level. But no one has ever been as good for as long as LeBron has. So the question comes down to, what matters more to you, the highest peak or the mountain, the glorious mountain range that goes from, horizon to horizon? I don't know the name of every mountain in the Himalayas. I know Mount Everest. I don't know the name of every mountain in the Rockies in America. I know Pikes Peak. That's the largest. Most people know the highest peak. So, I know Kilimanjaro. I don't know the 10 mountains to the right and left of it, right?
I understand.
So human nature, the highest peak tends to win. And Jordan had the highest peak. But LeBron's whole array is breathtaking too.
Tell me one thing. Do you think it's possible, because this is really speculative, that Nikola Jokić will play with Luka Dončić? In Europe, we speak a lot about it.
It would be amazing. I honestly think that Luka needs Nikola. He needs him. Because Luka is one of the most talented offensive players I've ever seen. What he can do with the basketball is amazing, but he has challenges in his game that hold him back. And I'd like to believe that he will get over these challenges, that he will not let emotion take him out of games. But he's 27 now, and he's not young. I mean, he's young by, I guess, age standards, but he's not young by basketball standards. He's played a very long time. He's played in a lot of really big games. And in all honesty, I think the best thing in the world for Luka would be for Nikola to play with him. Because they would be, he is so proud to be Slovenian. And I will say that one of the great accomplishments in international basketball of the last 20 years is the Slovenians winning or reaching the bronze medal game in Tokyo. Winning in Lithuania to get into the finals and then getting all the way there, like Luka carried them, was unbelievable. And that game was so meaningful to me because he played the Australians, and that group of Australians had been playing together for 15 years, building towards that moment. So it was very rewarding to see the Australians get that bronze medal. But that accomplishment was amazing. And so, but if you think, had Luka gone with his, he could have obviously played for Serbia. Had he gone with that, my God. I mean, really, in all honesty, if Yugoslavia could play we'd be talking about a run of Olympic gold medals if we could talk about Yugoslavia. But that's a complicated topic. I don't want to enter in that discussion, but let's just be honest, right? So I think, yes, I think it would be great. And I think Luka is going to need somebody to help him with the sophistication. He is, my God, size, good God, skill coming out his ears. The sophistication part, he is good enough to win everything. I can close my eyes and I can see Luka holding the NBA championship trophy with one hand and holding the finals MVP trophy. That can happen. He has everything you need, but if he had somebody like Nikola to check, not even just because he's a great player, but if he had somebody like that who could control him, who would just step in and say, no, stop. And not even on the court, but off the court as well. Yes, if it were me and I were Luka, I would make it a career priority. In all honesty, if I was an NBA player right now, I would be doing everything I possibly could to play with Jokic. I realize that there are certain players who, you have to have your own team and you don't want to do that, whatever. And Jokic has come out and said, I'm going to be in Denver. This is where I want to be. He has said this very clearly. And so if I was a star player, especially if I was a star player that wasn't winning everything, I would be trying to get myself to Denver. But, that's me.
Few more questions, please, Brian. Darko Rajakovic, we sometimes are not appreciating what he is doing, and his energy is beyond everything. I met him personally. I have huge respect It's even harder to become a coach in NBA than to become a player, you know. So what's your opinion about Darko and how he is doing his job with Toronto?
So Kendrick Perkins, you mentioned before, he tells a story about when Darko came to be an assistant in Oklahoma City. And they didn't know who this guy is. You know, who's this guy? You know, he's got an accent. Where is he from? I don't know. He's someplace in Europe. And from the first day in the first film session, he jumped all over Russell Westbrook, you know. And yes, his energy is tremendous. And, you know, I got to know him for the first time when he was on the staff of the 2019 Serbian national team. He was an assistant coach. That's where I met him. And his energy that he coaches with, you can't watch one game where he's the coach and not feel his energy. And, you know, the first couple of years in Toronto were rough. I mean, the team was not really built out. And, you know, there wasn't, people thought, like, I don't know if this guy's a head coach. And then obviously what he's been able to accomplish this year, you know, he gets that team. He gets the most out of that team. I still don't think it's a great roster. There are a couple of very talented players on the roster, but I don't think it's a great roster in terms of how it's constructed. He's got some depth that and he uses it. But he has earned his reputation as a coach this year. He has done really well, and they're a team. You know, right now they're in 5th place. And I don't think anybody had him in 5th place at the start of the season. And, you know, I think people almost thought, why did they invest in so much money in this roster? This roster isn't good enough because it's a very expensive roster. He has done a really nice job and I think he would say too, that he's a much better coach now than he was when he started as the head coach there. And so what I will say is this: Darko's going to be a coach in the NBA for a long time. Regardless of how this situation, like let's just say that it doesn't work out, he would get another job. Yeah. He's going to be a coach in the NBA for a long time. He has proven that. And, he's done it his way too. There's something to be said for that. You know, and a lot of times in the NBA, and I'm sure this is the case in European clubs too, but you have a choice a lot of times. You can do something in a way that won't get you fired. And there's a lot of people who stay in jobs and have wonderful lives and make good livings operating so that they don't get fired. And then there's, say, if I'm going to get fired, if it's not going to work, it's at least not going to be work when I'm doing it my way. And Darko has done it his way, and it's been working. And so I'm a little bit concerned about what their ceiling is, because I'm wondering if this is nearing it. Now, he would probably say no, just you wait, and he might be right. But his reputation has, let's put it this way. There are, as we sit here today, there's a month left in the regular season. There are 30 NBA teams. There are probably 10 to 12 teams that I'm not sure are going to have the same coach next year. Mm-hmm. This is the nature of the NBA. Toronto's not one of them. And so that, you know, I know that may sound like a low bar, but that's...
No, I understand completely.
Yeah. But he has demonstrated he's a bona fide at this level.
Two things. First, there is a World Cup, football World Cup, soccer World Cup this year in the States. I don't want to get into the politics, you know, because you know that we here went through and are going through really difficult stuff, the really difficult period. But do you think that somehow what is going on in the world will affect? What is your feeling about the World Cup? I know that you are a proud American. I really hope that it will look great, you know, I'm looking forward. But how do you approach this will be the biggest competition ever in any sport, you know?
Yeah. I had to send messages. I have many friends in the United Arab Emirates, and it is very upsetting to have to send messages to ask if they're okay, and they talk about seeing missiles going over their houses. And obviously for so many Serbians of a certain age, this is obviously something that you live through as well. And what I hope for in my life is I want sport to be, I want everybody to come under the tent. I want everybody to come under the tent and celebrate something together. And situations like this make it very difficult. And so I would never get involved. I don't understand all the dynamics. I don't live in the Middle East. I don't understand all the dynamics. But it's obviously upsetting for many reasons. So I'd like to believe that the World Cup ends up being a spot where everybody gets under the tent. But I don't know. I'm in Los Angeles right now. They're hosting World Cup games here. There's many places where this is going to be the biggest event that's ever happened in these cities. Some of these places, because there's some sort of mid-sized American cities that are getting games. America obviously is a huge place, and certainly we have big cities that have had major sporting events before. In Los Angeles, here I'm at, the Olympics are coming right after it. So it's a big deal, but it's not the be all end all. But there's some places in America that are having these events where it's the biggest event in the history of the city. And so you want to believe that that ends up becoming an experience that's remembered like that. Unfortunately, it's not guaranteed. So I'm 48. I've been around. I've seen enough to know that, not everything goes the way you want. But I am hoping for a positive experience. But it's only a hope. It's not a guarantee.
I understand completely. At the end, first, there are so many things I could speak with you about. I know that you are avid soccer fan. I know that
my team is Tottenham. It's been an absolute.
Oh my God! You watched what happened last night?
I had to turn it off. I literally turned it off. I couldn't watch it anymore. They got 3 goals in 15 minutes. I couldn't watch it.
What a pity about the goalkeeper. I feel sorry for him. Oh my God.
Yes, I'm surprised that I woke up today and didn't see news about the manager.
Yeah, I understand what they're saying. So I know that you're a soccer fan, so you follow it very closely. You have the national team coach who is from who used to be coach of Tottenham, Mauricio Pochettino. Very very nice guy. But I just want to briefly come back to the NBA. Please, in the meantime, if you see Bogdan and Luka, say hello to them. In LA. Hope to come to see you again, because this was wonderful city. I was at the All-Star game, and to be honest with you, maybe to share with the viewers, if I can pick the one event that shook me the most, it was the All-Star game in Atlanta, because of the reasons you mentioned at the beginning. Not because of the basketball and things, but about everything that surrounds. And it was my first trip to US. So really, I think I really grown up after that because of that. But what I wanted to ask you, in LA, Vlade Divac used to live, in Sacramento, Peja Stojakovic. Can you tell us briefly something about them? Because we are really proud about some Serbians, and of course that I will ask you about the Serbian players, like, I don't know, 2 of them. Marko Jaric used to play there, and Predrag Danilovic was really good, and Greg Popovich had a interesting relationship with Žarko Paspalj and things like that. So if something crosses your mind as an anecdote.
We all admired him because of his wife. I don't know if he's still married. We all admired Marko because of his wife.
No.
That's a shame. Well, anyway, I don't feel bad for him. Vlade, the way he could pass, you see the evolution of the game.
Yeah.
And you go from Vlade to Jokić. Vlade had size, skill, and sophistication, but his his talent level wasn't quite the same, but he got so much out of it. And I have friends who Vlade, is very close with, and he's one of the most admired men in basketball. Vlade, he walks into any room and he has instantaneous respect. When I was a kid, I was mesmerized by Drazen Petrovic. And Drazen Petrovic, the Drazen Petrovic Vlade Divac story is one of the great stories in basketball. At ESPN, we have produced all of these documentaries. Some of the best sports documentaries ever made. The documentary about the two of them and learning and understanding about their background. It's one of the greatest sports documentaries that's ever been made in America. It's complicated. I learned early in my career, when I understood the dynamics of Sasha Pavlovich and Gordon Giricic playing on the same Utah team, and how their viewpoints and their worldviews were extraordinarily different. It's a complicated thing, but I'm happy that so much of what's been about Serbia and the NBA has been so positive and in recent years. And I'm a big believer in Nikola Jokić. I was so impressed with him in the 2023 World Cup, and I sort of came back saying Jokić, and it hasn't worked out in Miami. And he's been rumored to potentially be traded 2 or 3 times. And the thing about it is that Jimmy Butler, he loves Jokić, and he really wanted Jokić to come with him to Golden State. And to win Jimmy Butler's respect is not easy. And so obviously Jokić is a bit of a complicated player. He's so size and skill. Yeah. My God, size and skill. So I still think, maybe a change of scenery at some point. I still very much believe in him. And I'm also very interested to watch Nikola Jokić.
Yeah.
As opportunity.
What a great persons are they. They are really, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, he's in a good place. And that team, they can't keep all of those players. They can't afford them. So there are going to be some players in front of him that move out of his way. It's just naturally going to happen. So I'm actually interested in watching Jokić play on the international level as well. I don't know how old he is. He looks like he's 15. He's still very much, physically needing to mature. And then he has obviously this terrible health thing, and they catch it, so it's good, but he's playing. And it's actually one of the more, one of the things in America that's, we have all of these healthy players that are not playing because the teams are tanking. You have healthy players not playing, star players not playing. Yeah. And then you have a guy coming back from cancer playing. So there's a couple of young Serbians that, I'm excited about their futures. But, we have many, many, many years left of Jokić. And I see no reason why he can't play for many years. And so I think his story is only still being written. So, but the idea of Jokić and Dončić playing together, it's an amazing, and it's not going to happen immediately, but careers are long, people always say life is short. Well, sometimes that's true, but I say sometimes life can be long. And so maybe it will happen. And I almost don't believe that Luka can win it until he gets with a player like Jokić, not because of talent. He doesn't need more talent, but he needs that other, maybe it'll happen with somebody to come to LA, but, but I'm very much looking forward to the 27 World Cup. I'm not as invested in because the Americans, I don't think I'm even going to go because the Americans don't have to, I try to educate fans here. Qualifying for the Olympics is so hard. They just take it for granted. The U.S. is qualified for the last 2 Olympics like this, barely, and nobody knows. They just say, oh, the Olympics are here. When's the first game? because the U.S. doesn't have to qualify for the Olympics and the World Cup, I'm not sure what kind of team they're even going to send. So the World Cup obviously will be next summer. I will be watching from afar. I've gone to the last 3 World Cups. I don't think I'm going to go to this one. I'm not looking. First off, I don't even know what's going to be going on in Qatar in 27. This is another topic. I'm not looking to sign up for 3 weeks in the desert though in August. So that's another part of it. But we do have a lot of big time basketball coming up over the next few years, and the Serbians, whether it's in the NBA or it's on the international stage, are going to be very involved, I think.
Brian, thank you very, very, very much. It's a pleasure and honor to speak with you, and because of today's media, it's easy to look, to follow the US media. And, in many terms, US sports and US organizations are, let's say, the organization we should look up to. Is that the right expression, Yeah.
Some days, but not all.
Yeah, I understand. Let's take the best, okay? Let's mix it.
I would say that not everything I ever say may be enjoyed totally by the Serbian fans, which is fine. But just know that my admiration for Serbian basketball is enormous. And my trip to Belgrade is one of the most favorite things I've ever done in basketball. And I can't wait to come back and also to eat.
Hope to see you here. Hope to see each other maybe during the World Cup and especially during the Olympics. And let's hope for the peace in the world and everyone be under the same tent, as you said.
I enjoyed it greatly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian. We're in touch about everything. Zahvalnost Plazmi koja pravi novu kampanju Dodir ljubavi, podsjećajući na jedan od prvih dodira koji smo imali kao deca. Dodir sa Plazmom. Hvala Plazmi i Bambiju što podržavaju ovaj podcast i naravno hvala Generali osiguranju koji je i dalje tu. Hvala što ste gledali. Ukoliko želite da podržite podcast na način da se pretplatite, da pratite, da delite ili možda da donirate sredstva, bilo bi nam jako drago i zahvalnost na tome. Do sledeće prilike, pozdrav!